Ready, set, go.
Let's go.
Gentlemen, what's happening?
Ethan, you gonna start us out?
No.
Jeremy French, you were on the podcast with me. When was that? A couple months ago?
It's been a couple of months.
And-
When was that?
You shared with myself and the audience how you tend to like host these little
Lunch every day.
lunch iggies.
It's not little, as you
Yeah.
can see. We've got a couple of pounds of bacon sizzling right now. We've got a crew of unbelievably beautiful, talented people back there that are just can't wait to be famous,
Like Ethan.
like Ethan. Ethan, this is funny. You told me you're coming on here, and for months now when we planned this, Ethan's like, "Can I talk? Can I get a chance
Well, I
to
don't know
talk?"
about that. I don't know that I ever said that.
You said it like every day. Every
No,
day
well-
we get in, and you're like, "How many more days?"
Jeremy's not a bullshitter. Jeremy won't bullshit
I
you.
want-
He
you-
won't.
you know how they have-
He's a
That's
straight
not
shooter.
accurate.
Jeremy's a straight shooter.
So when I was growing up, we had an advent calendar, and it was like stitched together with like kind of like a felt material. And every day it was like this thing where you got to go put a different figurine on the Christmas tree, and you just get so excited. Well, we have one of these. You can't see it right now because it's in the wood shop. And every day Ethan's come in and put a little figurine on there
oh my goodness.
for his
No.
for his chance
Oh
to
my
be
goodness.
famous.
That's
So-
beautiful. Yeah.
Whatever you say, Jeremy.
What's that? They're on the windowsill. They're all the little figurines that they've been waiting.
I
That's
can
that's like Ethan basically. He's been sitting at the window waiting for Steven to show up,
Looking for the microphone.
waiting for the chance to get on the microphone.
Internet famous. Here we go.
Johnny Kennedy's back at the table.
Yeah.
Johnny P.
Can't stay away. I just follow Steven around and try and get my face in the photo just a little bit, or get back on the mic again.
You gonna bring your humor today, or did you just leave it at home with the wife?
I know this is like for a very specific audience member, but I just want to start this out by saying that Ginger Malcolm is afraid of going on the podcast with me at the same time because she knows I have more charisma and energy than she does.
I love it. She talked about.
I'm not talking shit. It's like Jeremy's not talking shit. He's a truth teller. He's a straight shooter. He's just
Truth to power.
just giving us the facts, and that's just Ginger Malcolm. That's the facts.
She said she was gonna be here today, and I don't see her. So fashionably late as usual.
Like the Christmas party. Like the Christmas
Like
party.
the Christmas
Yeah.
party. So let's like kind of like reset for a little bit and talk about like who you are, where are we, what are we doing, what is making whole.
I'm gonna let somebody else answer that question.
I'll answer that question
All right,
while
you
you're
answer that
moving
question
stuff.
while Michael's gonna come over here and he's gonna talk. Michael was the first guy to be here,
Okay.
and so I have no idea what he's gonna say. This is completely unscripted, and we're gonna let him explain what's going on here. Does that sound like a plan?
Let's do this.
All right, he's gonna have to put his little puppy dog. Let's
You can bring her with her.
bring the puppy dog. The puppy dog needs to be famous. That dog's absolutely gonna be famous.
So this is one of the most punk rock things I've witnessed in Western North Carolina. Not you and the puppy dog, but what Jeremy is doing here.
Yeah.
I just thought he was a knucklehead who I played soccer with. But then he was like, come on down and see what I'm doing. This thing is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a game changer. And I don't mean to give Jeremy compliments because he doesn't deserve them, but this thing's a game changer.
You want me to help you out, brother? You worry about the dog. You don't have to wear him. You don't have
I'll
to
be
wear him.
good.
It's cool. I can hear you
I
loud
don't
and
like
clear.
hearing my own voice.
So, what's your name?
Michael.
Michael.
Lavin.
Michael Lavin, the first apprentice at
Yes.
Making Whole. What is Making Whole?
I get to work for the only person probably in the world who knows more than I do, which is hard. Kind of know everything.
Or else he
Yeah,
thinks
so
he does.
we make cool shit,
Uh-huh.
and I'm terrible at this.
Come on.
Yeah, we make stuff and we learn how to be better human beings. I guess that's before we make stuff. And I don't know, I was here by myself for a while. And that was cool. But now it feels more, with more people, kind of more like a family.
I definitely sense that walking in the door and seeing all you guys like in action in your own little space doing what you do. With that being said, how did you like find out what was going on here and what interests you about signing up for something like this?
Yeah, so kind of my whole life I've always been interested in like fashion and design and that kind of thing, but I don't know if I never really tried to find a way to like be able to work that into my life, or if I just never really had a good opportunity to do something like that. But my halfway house, the owner of the halfway house I was at, worked for Jeremy. I don't know, how many years ago did Zach work for you?
Over a decade ago.
Yeah, so I guess he heard from Jeremy that he was starting this up and then kind of told me about it. And then I went from there.
What kind of project have you? Because I walked in, you guys were doing some like pretty cool stuff back there.
Yeah.
When I got here a couple
well,
hours
when
ago.
I first got here, there was nothing
Yeah.
at all. There was just like some walls and stuff. So
So this beautiful kitchen that's
yeah,
behind me.
all of this stuff we've done. Pretty much everything in here, other than the machines we've been building.
Yeah.
So we should draw like a word picture for all the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are listening.
Millions.
Millions of people who are listening. Is that we're in a massive industrial space, basement industrial space in Asheville, which has how many square feet is this place?
Like 7,500. How big?
How big
many
is this?
square feet? 8,000.
So it's in 8,000 industrial square feet and has tons of like metalworking and woodworking and concrete pouring machines. And this is Jeremy's baby, his dream, that the best way to help people through recovery is to actually give them these really legitimate skills, really rewarding skills. And so they built this whole space. I think that's what we're talking about. Built these like massive tables of counters of concrete and did the wood paneling and did all the divisions and made this space. So it's an amazing space.
It is.
Yep.
It is. I didn't realize the size of it until I walked in the door, when I saw like pictures on Instagram and conversations with Jeremy and sitting down and talking with him about the work that's being done in here. I expected that shop over there, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really like all I expected. Like I didn't expect all this additional kind of common space along with like the massive woodworking shop.
Yep.
Back there. Who works back there?
All of us.
Everybody. Cool.
The 90-year-old.
The old timer.
We'll get him on.
Yeah.
Introduce everybody to the 90-year-old that doesn't look a day older than 80.
So Ethan, tell me about your experience here, man.
It's not only is working here fun, but I feel like I need a little bit more intensity than just going to AA meetings, and so it's really great to be able to come here every weekday and work for 9 or so hours in like a recovery type setting with other people who are in recovery. And Jeremy's got this weird way of like spinning these metaphors that like only make sense at the last moment, but then like you think about it for the rest of the night.
Like, does it make sense?
Sometimes.
Yeah, no, they do. They make a lot of sense. It's just, it's funny how he does it. He'll relate something we're working on to recovery or to life in general, because it's not just about recovery. And I just love working here. It's really fun to work with my hands and do these sort of projects. I've never done anything like this before. So yeah.
What how did you find out about it?
Michael was my roommate at a halfway house.
Okay.
And he came to me one night and was like, he was telling me all about the program for weeks, and one day he's like, you should come in. Jeremy's looking to scholarship someone, and I was like, man, I'll come in and give it a shot, because I was doing tree work before this. And I came in, and Jeremy said, why don't you come work for me? And that was that.
How long you been here?
I don't even.
I've been here
5
since
months?
July,
Okay.
I think.
August. I've been here since August.
Monday through Friday, kind of
Yeah.
9 to 5 deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's a
Most
typical
weekends.
What's a
8:30 to 5:30.
What's a typical day like? Like describe a typical day in the.
You come in and work on whatever projects we've been working on. Sit down for lunch. Usually, anywhere from 12 to 2.
Like, nice extended lunch. That's yeah.
and then just go. I mean, every day's different, depending on what we're working on. And yeah, that's a hard question to answer.
What kind of projects, man?
Well, we built both countertops, the cabinets, that bar. We just installed the back of the bar today. So that's something we've been working on. Michael did this cool project before I got here. That was like these concrete table bases for a restaurant in Atlanta. But unfortunately, I wasn't here to work on that. Let's see, we do a lot of stuff. I'm trying to think. Oh, that planter outside, we did that. Poured the footer, built the form, poured the footer, laid the brick, and then put a cap on it. Went to the nursery and got a bunch of plants. So we ate those for a little while. That was a nice addition.
Did either of you two have any prior experience in this type of trade?
No. I did do community service after I got arrested.
Didn't we all, brother? Didn't we all?
I built some stuff for like a community theater. That was about the extent of my knowledge.
Yeah.
So none.
So pretty novice, like walking in the door. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, sir.
It was one of the best.
You were one of the best at reading a tape.
No, it was god awful.
Who's your friend?
This is Danny Daenerys.
The shop dog? Whose dog is it?
It's
Shop-
mine.
Oh, that's your dog.
Yeah, she's still in training.
Uh huh.
She yeah, she goes to the bathroom wherever she pleases right now.
Okay.
And I get to clean it all up.
In the shop.
Yeah.
In the shop. Johnny, have you tapped into these resources here and like?
Yeah, I've hung out with Mike. I've
Yeah.
hung out with Jeremy.
Are these guys like on board on? Are you working with them on your project or?
Yeah, I have Mike's oral history. I have Jeremy's oral history, and then I try and make it at least once a week, just to get a free lunch out of Jeremy.
Does he show up for the free lunch or does he show up for the? He's out.
Well, I ate my lunch.
I did.
Now I gotta go.
I did notice that when he walked in the door, you asked him. The first thing you asked him was how long you planned on staying today, and he said, "Oh, he mumbled something." And then he was like,
I'm here
"Oh,
till
2
2. I'm
o'clock."
here till 2.
What are your long-term goals? Like, what do you plan to do after you complete? What is it? 1 year? Ish?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do with these skills?
Well, I'd like, as far as like the woodworking and the concrete skills go, I'd like to stay in the field. Maybe I'll go back to school at some point, but that's a consideration for down the road. But no matter what I do, like I'll carry on a lot of the life skills that I'm learning here.
Long-term goals in my life have always failed pretty miserably. So I'm gonna just see how it goes.
Yeah. It is. Oh man, I love it. I agree with you, man, because like I'm the type of person that like when I set these long-term goals, like they're always changing, and they're always
Yeah.
like what I wanted to do when I'm in early recovery, getting back into school, and I was like studying substance abuse counseling, and I wanted to go in like social work and do all these grand things, and that's totally changed from where I stand today, and like
Yeah.
wanting to like do this podcast and wanting to like engage more in the recovery community and talk with individuals on we got a new party to the table.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. What's happening? Introduce yourself.
I'm Adam.
Adam,
Yeah.
welcome to NC Raw. Thanks for
Good to be here.
like hosting. You were like influential in that cooking process back there a little bit, huh?
That's probably
Kinda.
an overstatement.
Is
I
it?
did slice some tomatoes. So.
Okay. I seen you back there working, man. I seen you back there working. The smell of bacon is like overcoming me. It really is. The smell of bacon.
Better get you some.
Yeah, I'm going to. So tell me about your experience here, man.
So I've been here about a month.
Are you the newest?
Yeah, I guess I am.
Danny's the newest?
Yeah. But I've known Jeremy for years. Lived here for a while and had moved away. And was in treatment center down in Texas, left abruptly, and had some chaos going on, and I talked to Jeremy. He said if I could get myself here, he'd have a spot for me. So I think it was definitely the right move. Drove 1,100 miles pretty directly, and I've been here for 43 days.
Kick ass, man.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
been going good.
What outside of what you're doing here at Making Whole, if you're okay like talking about some of these things, outside of what you're doing here at Making Whole, like what else what does your recovery look like? Like what else are you doing in your personal life outside of the skills that you're learning here and this kind of sense of community that you guys are doing? Like what kind of approach? How would you define it?
I mean, just 12-step stuff. Yeah. Just trying to follow the formula.
Yeah.
This is sort of the new piece. I've done, AA and NA in the past with some success, but I've never been able to maintain it longer than about a year and a half. So, I don't know. I'm hoping to have a new experience this time around, but meetings, halfway house, sponsor,
Yeah.
that kind of deal.
Do you have any prior experience in a trade like this?
Yeah, I've worked construction most of my life. Started framing houses and stuff when I was 14. Did cabinetry for a while. Worked on boats down in Florida. Worked for a luthier here in town, building guitars for a while, and was building furniture on my own.
So you're like a natural fit for this kind of model almost.
Totally, yeah. It's like heaven to me, man.
Yeah.
It's the nicest shop I've ever seen, let alone worked in.
I'd like to tour around and check it out a little bit further before I head out this afternoon and see some of that. So, like, I think I was asking Jeremy because, like, I still haven't really gotten the answer, but like, could somebody explain what Making Whole is? I want to kind of like reset for the audience who didn't catch Jeremy's podcast when he was first on a couple months ago. Like, what is the program? What do you guys do here? No pressure, man.
I got a mouthful of bacon, but hey, I'm Andy Ray.
Andy, Steve, nice to meet you,
Steve,
sir.
good to meet you, man. The way I see this program is to take people that need help in their lives and put them to work in a meaningful way. And in here, we're doing what I consider 4 things. We're building concrete, metal, and wood furniture. And we're also centered around food and the cooking of food and the nutrition behind food and the community gathering of food. So I think that plays a big part of what all of us are doing here. And of course, there's a free lunch every day.
Yeah, and it's not just the free lunch. From what Jeremy was pumping last time he was on, the free lunch is you open the doors to the community. Is that correct? Like
Yeah.
you invite anybody and everybody.
So
to,
all my friends in Asheville and beyond, if I start talking about this place, I'm like, come here noonish because lunch is free and it's nutritious. It's not a crap lunch, it's good lunch.
yeah,
Usually, sometimes it's cooked right here or prepped.
most times, right? Often, quite often.
So I think working in a meaningful way, meaning that we're creating real things here, furniture-based designs, and we're learning, all these guys, including me, we're learning techniques that are centered around a real craft, whether it be concrete, metal, or wood, or any other. We're actually recently getting into a bunch of leather work. It carries a certain authenticity that I think builds a life of honesty and character and worth, as opposed to, and I'm kind of involved a little bit with 12-step. My girlfriend's a recovering alcoholic, And so, and I've been familiar with it for years. And I've known Jeremy for almost 20 years now, since we both moved here about the same time. Doing something that keeps you busy but has meaningful business to it is better than. I mean, I'm not dissing going to meetings and all, but there's a level of integration and showing up and being here that you can't get in most other programs. And then you have something that you take with you, which is a skill or an experience that the shop here provides, because we're doing real work. And we're trying to do fine furniture, so this isn't a beginner's course, as it were. These guys, some of them, like Michael, didn't know how to read a tape measure, but they're also learning how to hand plane a piece of wood down to thousandths of an inch to get the kind of fit that we want for fine furniture,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
And looking back, like, what, 6-7 months ago, that stuff was foreign to you, right? And now you're taking that
Right.
valuable skill set and can apply that to other aspects of your life.
Yeah, I think it does. It translates, I think, that when you go home and part of what you're doing in the day translates to what you're doing at home in terms of focus, the attention that you have to give to things to be able to create furniture and to design, and you start looking at the beauty around you instead of the filth.
Yeah. Do you find yourself like analyzing like other pieces of furniture or things out in your life, like looking at
Oh,
it
yeah.
like, I would have done that a little bit differently, or Jeremy totally would have told me to do this instead of,
Right.
yeah. Pardon me, I'm just getting over a cold. So what do you plan to do with this set of skills? Let's go.
I've been doing this forever, so I'm almost 40 years in the trade
All right.
of furniture making, woodworking specifically. I've got a background in writing and editing. I've written 5 or more books and numerous articles, and I've taught in different classes around the country. So for me, this is a shop. This is
Yeah.
a really cool shop. It's not only got woodworking, it's got metal and concrete, which is a really newer medium for me, which is exciting. So it's basically a place for me to work. And I find that I come here to get whole. It's making me more whole than I've ever been, just being in this space with this set of people and the program that we're working on.
Now, most of the work that's being done, like initially, was to like build the space here. But moving forward, like, what type of jobs do you guys like take on? Like who hires you?
Oh, I got some ideas, yeah.
Okay, well, Maddie. Well, first introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Matthew.
Welcome.
Welcome, yeah.
And what
Thank
so
you for having me,
yeah, absolutely, dude. So you
So I started this program about 5-6 months ago. I had about a year of sobriety, and I just wanted to kind of further that, make sure I got into something that would, take up some time, and I would learn a little bit while being sober, because, just like building stuff every day and keeping my hands busy, like keeps me from, thinking about like going out and relapsing or going out and partying on the weekends, gives me a little bit of time to collect myself and, learn something new while I'm doing it.
So what do you want to build?
tell me about some of these ideas you got, man.
Oh, well, right now Adam's helping me with a crystal case. I collect like gems and minerals and stuff, so I'm making a display case. Earlier this year, I learned how to refinish a little nightstand, painted like a little mandala on top of that, and
So the design
like to
process
learn how to
is,
do stuff like longboards and
Okay.
skateboards. And
the design process is pretty open to like what.
What Maddie might bring something in and say, I want to do this, and so he's got all these heads around him that can help him get the design
yeah, a lot
focus
of
and techniques for
I know
building.
Adam's been working for like, 10 years now? And you've been working for what, like 40?
90.
Yeah, long time. So when I come in and have a question about woodworking, it's good to have people that are, you know, knowledgeable of that kind of skill. Because like before in the past, woodworking never really crossed my mind. I gotten into like ceramics before, but not till this year did I become interested in woodworking and different cement work. When I started, we built the garden box outside, did the brickwork for that, and did all the cement work for that, and that was like a really cool. I think it was spring, man. It was spring, yeah. So that was like a really cool spring project, and then.
And we got to pick the greens that grew from the garden.
Yeah, then we got to pick the greens for that, and we cut off the salad bar at least once a week. You know, use all the greens that we planted this spring for fresh salad, and that's just like really great, man. It's just like good to wake up in the morning and know that you're doing something productive every day till the afternoon, and then gives a little bit of time. You know, I still got time for my NA program to do the 12 steps and to go to the AA meetings. So I like to go to like two or three of those a week when I'm not working here, and then that gives time for the weekends. You know, go ride mountain bikes and
Stay active.
yeah, stay active, and then come back and think about building shop tables, or like I learned how to make a chopping block for the kitchen. I know my mom likes that one. She really likes the chopping block, and just a bunch of different exciting opportunities that we have here.
When I think when Jeremy was on last, we were kind of like exploring this question a little bit, but like what is it about like the process of like making stuff, like that from the idea to like the fabrication process to like the outcome of whatever it is that you're building that like provides that like fulfillment, natural fulfillment for us. It's kind of like a primal like part of our DNA that like it's just. Did I tell you about my like chicken coop story? Yeah,
I
like
remember that.
when you heard it? When I first, in early recovery, I moved from Florida, like literally like a month out of getting out of treatment. And I'm up in my family's cabin on top of this mountain. And like a week after I got here, we got snowed in, like 2 feet of snow or something. And I was kind of like, you know, getting a little stir crazy. And I was just like looking for something to do. I was getting literally cooped up. And so like,
Chicken.
I was like, I don't know, I was just messing around on the internet, on the computer, fucking around, and I was like, somehow, I was just like, I'm gonna build a chicken coop. I started scrounging around in my garage, like we had a bunch of like leftover material from different projects on the cabin and stuff like that, and so I was like, all right, I'm gonna build this chicken coop, but I'm not gonna purchase any material. I'm just gonna use like whatever I can scrounge up on the property, whatever I can find. So like I spent like the next like 4 days like, you know, building this chicken coop like in the garage. Like I was in the garage just like piecing together stuff, and then like ended up, you know, with a finished product, right? And then like as soon as the snow melted, I went down to the feed store and I got like 6 little baby chicks. And I raised them up. And then like, you know, 8-9 months later, I'm getting like 6 eggs a day out of the chicken coop, you know, and it's like, it was like that natural like process. And it was just like, it was so fulfilling for me. And I don't have really like a background in like any type of like carpentry work or anything like that whatsoever. But I was just like, you know, it's just something to do. So like, you know, what is it about that process of just like from the idea, like the moment you have the idea and then you begin to like sketch it out, right? And then you begin to plan it, and then you begin to like gather your materials or make your material list and like put it all together and then to see the outcome. Like what is it about that process that
So much of it is a problem-solving situation, which is our lives are filled with problems. Get us out of the shop and go back home when you face problems. So I think we learn by problem solving every day. We have to figure stuff out. What we're doing here is typically nobody has done any of this before. We're doing something that's unique. It's a one-off. We're building a kitchen bar out of concrete and walnut that's never been done before and will probably never be done again. So there's all these little issues that we have to solve while we're building that. And they crop up. You can't sit there and you do some planning, which is important. I think that's also important to your life process. But in the reality and the stronger pull for me is that you realize that shit happens and that you have to solve that issue that comes up while you're creating something. So problem solving is a big part of the daily grind here that to me is exciting. I love it. I mean, it's face me with an issue that has to be solved, and I'll find out some way. And one of the things that I'm getting here is that there's all these different heads here and there's an entrainment that kind of happens where people are coming together so the knowledge is shared and the problems are easier to solve as a group in this setting than they would be on your own in a small little shop or in your house at home at night. So I think that's a big part of the program is dealing with issues that pop up. And sometimes it's an emotional issue for one of us here where we're having a rough day, and that's problem solving. And part of that is just the community effort of everybody here to help somebody else who might be having a rough day.
So tell me an example of how one of you guys have taken some of these problem-solving skills and kind of applied it in your life outside of the studio.
A good question.
That's a good one. I just got here, man. I can answer your other
Well,
question.
for me, were you going to talk?
Go ahead.
Just like learning how to deal with my frustrations when it comes down to like learning new things and not getting so much hung up on like not being able to do it at first. And then having like a team of people to work with. It really helps by the end of the day because I know I like, there's like times when I go through things and I'm just like really super frustrated because I have no idea how to complete the process right. And I'm sitting there thinking, God, if I was by myself, I would never be able to figure this out. Like, what am I going to do? And then, like, you know, Jeremy always calms me down and just, like, tells me to be here now and just, like, figure out the problem as a team or, like, work out whatever the situation is at hand.
Does that help you at home when you get frustrated with something?
Yeah, and I mean, there's people up there too at the sober living that I live at. So, I mean, I miss most of the days with them. I'm usually here, but I think it has been a lot easier for me just to get through the day. Having other people, I can always ask Ethan and Michael. They just moved on. They used to live at the sober house. But I mean, there's always somebody here to talk to, you know? And so I think that helps with the group dynamics. Just like every day, you know, we work a little bit better as a team, I think. Like trying to get projects done and coming together and making like, you know, useful pieces, shop equipment, tables, countertops, and just like the satisfaction of building the satisfaction of building something that's functional and that we can all use together in the shop is just like, feels great.
Yeah. You talked about like overcoming challenges, like trying to like problem solve, right? It's kind of like what our minds kind of like always want to do or always trying to do. But it's also like, I think I can see value in kind of like having the idea, formulating like the concept of whatever it is that you're trying to create, and then it not working out, right? And then like that being able to apply that life skill, saying that like, okay, like things aren't always going to be the way that I want them to be. Like I have this grand idea and I can see what it looks like in my head, but you know, it's just not going to work out. Like I put the pieces to the puzzle together and they don't fit, right? And then you can take that skill and apply it to whatever it is that's going on in your daily life. Like
So failure
Failure.
to me is a big
yeah,
part of success.
and unanswered questions. Like I don't necessarily though I want to solve the problem, I might not be able to.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I can accept that, right? And I can still like move forward without getting the answers that my mind is looking for.
So I think patience comes in with that. That's a learning process that happens here and at home, wherever. But that failure is a big part of everything we do in terms of designing and creating and making furniture. And it's certainly been the case for me for almost 4 decades of just trying stuff and most of it doesn't work, to be honest. Most of it doesn't work, but then you move around that and you try something else and something starts to gel a little bit. And you may end up with something at the end. You may not end up with anything at the end, but you're going to walk away with something in you, I think, that fortifies, at the very least, your spirit, if not your whole character, in terms of patience and focus and the ability to stay with something until you feel like you need to let it go. And that's part of what I do every day, is just try and get something done. I mean, we all want to succeed, and that's certainly part of the goal, but the expectations have to be realistic or authentic, and that means that you're not always going to succeed. So I look at failure as a great way, a measure of how far you can come. The more you fail, the more likely you are to succeed at any task.
But in early recovery, probably more so than anything, there's for many individuals, myself being one of them, there's like a heavy sense of like fear of failure.
Yeah, it's fear
and
of
that's
relapse.
it's hard to step up to the challenge.
Adam, that's your cue to sit up. Start talking right there. Adam's got some experience with early recovery, yeah?
I've been in early recovery for like 10 years, pretty much.
You got any experience with being afraid of failure?
Yeah, I mean, this can be crippling. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to have faith in building a life when you have an awareness that you could potentially burn it all down at any moment.
So coming in here and tackling some of these projects, knowing that there's an opportunity, that there's a chance that whatever it is that you guys are working on might fail, right?
We did a little failing this morning.
Yeah.
Did you?
Scary failing.
Yeah. Chunks of wood flying across the shop. I think one of the things that's interesting in listening to you talk about this and having it being a difficult thing to say, how do I apply what I'm learning here out into the world? I just had an anniversary earlier in the week, and I was thinking back to something a guy told me early in recovery, in my first couple of months. He said, you got to be willing to push a peanut with your nose from here to California. And if you'd have asked me the day after he had said that, whether that had any significance in my life, particularly outside of the context of the relationship I had with him, I wouldn't have been able to give you any answers about that. And part of the reason why is because learning is such a slow thing. Learning how to, learning how to use a tape measure. One of the things that guys come in here, and what Maddie was just talking about, is that there's a lot of frustration in going up against something you don't know how to do, right? It's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people in early recovery get and fail, right? And so there's a value in becoming comfortable with learning how to use a tape measure that doesn't necessarily translate immediately out into the world, certainly not in a fashion that you can comprehend, right? And so when I look back to this guy telling me this, I realize today that idea has shown up in my head over and over and over again, this year in particular, is that I've got to be willing to go to any lengths and not let anything come in my way of doing something that's difficult and challenging and all those types of things. That idea, those simple ideas are what changed the trajectory of my life. And so part of what I feel real strongly about this place and about recovery in general, and why all the modalities that work, that survive the test of time in recovery, all involve community. Almost without exception, there's some sort of community element in that. And I think part of the reason why that ends up playing out in the long run is that the growing is this sort of, it's like a dance, you know, and it's a dance that happens with other people who are at different stages in development. And it happens slowly over a period of time. And before you realize it, you can dance. It's like, it's funny, Maddie said, Adam's playing guitar. He's quite an accomplished guitar player. I was playing the other day. And Maddie said, oh, I got a guitar, and I tried it, and it sucked. I hated it, you know. I wanted to play My Girl or something like that on the guitar, and it didn't work, you know. And so what's funny with Adam is recently he was kind of in a similar spot, accomplished, but like at a standstill about, like he couldn't get any further with his learning, you know. He couldn't kind of break through the wall, so he went to school and started studying that. And over a period of time, I could hear him because I would see him on occasion. I would hear his playing. I could hear how much it had changed, but still there's this element of learning where you don't hear it yourself. You don't see the transformation yourself until a lot of times pass, but you just keep showing up, keep plugging away, and this growth happens, and then the next thing you know, you're in a different place. And so all that to say, part of what I'm trying to create here, and part of what I try to create in my relationships in recovery, are platforms for something to happen. Basically a framework for something to happen, a place that has a certain framework, and then everything else that happens is a natural progression that I trust that if the framework is right, the natural progression will lead to people's growth. And it doesn't seem monumental. You know, you ask me what we do here every day, and it's like, well, hell, I don't know, you know? Like I cut that board, and I got frustrated about that thing, and it just translates into, well, we just make things all
Look
day.
at that. The woodwork right there.
That's a great example of like, there's a lot of problems to solve in that throughout the entire process. From the time we were going, this right here that represents a dozen problems that like had everybody who was involved in the project stopped at different times, at different stages.
And then I walked in the room today,
it
and
was
like
good.
all of these guys are taking pictures of it.
Right, right.
Proud of the finished product.
Right, right.
You guys were taking pictures of it, showing it off.
Right. And that represents a lot of problems that we had to solve. But that realization, this is a very different level of recovery when you realize, oh man, that thing that I did really did make a difference. Because the things that transform us they're not monuments, you know. So much of what people who are drug addicted want is a monument. We want this monumental experience that makes everything okay, the sort of happily ever after. And so that's what we're looking for. When we're scanning our lives and scanning what's happening, we're looking for the monument. What actually changes us are this sort of daily monotonous chopping wood and carrying water. And next thing we know, just like learning how to play guitar, we can do things because we've been just chopping wood and carrying water.
They're not immediate monuments, but like you told that story with the guy that told you that quote, like who knows the amount of time that
JP,
might
it's
pass.
not 2
JP is out.
I'm meeting my wife at 2
It's 1:45.
Man, it's 1:45, dude. You got at least 16 minutes.
He changed his story all of a sudden as soon as he got that bacon in his belly.
I'm late. It stays.
Hey, I expect to see you soon here, JP.
Johnny Kennedy, you're the man. I still love you, buddy. They're not immediate monuments.
Hey, you know what's interesting is that they're not monuments for me at all.
Yeah.
Like this thing going up is kind of like, it's funny, one of the first mentors I had was a jeweler. And this was early in my creative process. And he made amazing things. He made my wedding ring years after we got to know each other. And he would make these amazing things, and I was enamored with his work. And one day we were talking, and he says, you know, the truth of the matter is when I finish a piece, I don't ever want to see it again. I'm sick of looking at it. And for him, what he was talking, I couldn't understand what he was talking about because I was so proud of anything that I created. But what he was talking about is that the process becomes way more important than the finished goal, you know. So there is a reward early on. I think this is true for most makers. There's a reward early on of accomplishing something and being able to take a picture of it. To me, like, once we were done oiling that, that's off. I'm done thinking about it ever. And chances are, I'll never see that again in the way that it is because I'm on to the next.
Is that because you have a million other projects to work on?
It's because I'm not concerned with the outcomes. It's because outcomes are just not important. What's important is to be engaged in the process. And that's when I find myself most engaged in life in
That's when
general.
we're alive, is in the making.
Right.
When we're
Man,
done, when we're done
See, this guy's a
making-
slow learner. You've told him 3 times to put his mouth up to the microphone. He's leaning back like he's freaking. I got it cranked up pretty good. Oh yeah,
Thanks.
you're solving this
We're
problem.
alive because we're thinking, we're problem solving, we're accessing other information, we're using our peers to help us out, we're using the space around us, and all that is what happens every day. At the end of the day, if there's a wall of walnut to look at it and it's completed, that's just a fleeting moment of you could call it success, but it's not ever a monument to me. It's the same idea with a piece of furniture. When the furniture leaves the shop and goes to a customer's house or wherever it might live, I'm glad to see it gone because I'm over it. I've spent hours poring over the little details in the wood and just getting myopically involved in terms of grain structure and joinery and finish and all that stuff that goes into making things. And that's the joy of it for me, is that I'm involved, I'm on a task, I'm busy all day long, and then when it's done, it's done. It's time to move on to the next thing.
I think part of what he said too is eventually you take enough pictures and they stop feeding you, you know? That's what we think is going to make us be better is when there's this moment, there's this monument. It's like, oh, that's the thing. But then you get enough monuments in your life and you realize they're just not that important. You know, and then you have enough times where you're engaged in the process enough and you have the experience of being alive, and then that becomes the thing that you look for. At some point, it's, you know, there's not going to be that moment where I get to walk off into the sunset. That's never coming. So what's the point in looking for it? You know, if what I can do is...
Got news.
I always drive into the sunset.
Got news for you guys.
and think, man, this is the life. Driving into the sunset.
Maddie's once again proving me wrong.
There's no finish line.
There is no...
So you end up, after a while of doing these things, you end up trying to find a way to make the process more enjoyable, which is also part of learning. So you have to learn these techniques and these tools, and you have to gain more skill with your hands and your body and your mind. And that starts to be the monumental payoff for me, is that I'm more capable to handle something that I may have never done before, but I've got a shop and a crew around me to help support that. And I'm focused on making that a successful moment in time. It might be 10 minutes at the bench hand planing a piece of wood. It's not the end result. It's not, oh, look how smooth that wood is, and look how tight fitting that joint is, and look how beautiful that piece of furniture is. It's the making of it that counts. And that's my daily grind, is why spend the whole time struggling to do something to get something done and something you can look at when it's the process itself that you want to master.
So it's kind of like coming to flow with the
Yes.
process.
The flow is a
Lots of
great
flow.
example. And, you know, that's a question I would pose to anybody is, if you had the choice to pursue something that you thought was going to make you happy and arrive at that and get whatever you're going to get, whether it makes you happy or not, or you had the option to be content in every moment of the day, which choice would you take?
Yeah.
Would you bank on that thing you think is going to make you happy, actually making you happy, and would you bank on all the time you'd have to invest in getting there being worth it? Or, you know, it's like the old proverb, would you rather be right or happy? You know, which one would you rather arrive at the monument, or would you rather not have the need to get there? You know, if you don't have to need to get there, if what you can do is find joy in the daily work, what else is there? You know, if every day you get up and you enjoy the process of making yourself a cup of coffee and considering your day and doing all those things, there's really not much else to worry about. You know, one of my favorite quotes, and it's interesting. I've been reading this quote. It's at the core of what got me to start this project was this idea, and I've read more in where this quote came from. It's a quote by Merton, and it's something to the effect of, "Do not depend on the hope of results." You might fail. You might not get what you want. Everything might fall apart. And basically what you have to do is fall in love with the work itself and let that be enough. And that's not the actual quote. The quote's way more
Rightness.
eloquent than that.
Believe in the rightness.
Believe in the rightness of the work itself. And so that's always been kind of in my mind, is that if I can enjoy what's in front of me, it doesn't matter the outcome. What's interesting is that came out of a letter that he wrote back in response to a guy who was protesting the Vietnam War, who was a religious guy of some, Merton was a monk. So this guy was a religious guy of some stripes, and he was talking about how he couldn't get through to people. Like, how is killing people okay, and this is a bad thing? And basically Merton's response is like, it doesn't, if you're doing the work, if you believe in the work you're doing, you just got to do that. And you just got to believe in that, and you might not get anything out of it. And there's something about recovery in that too. Is it like, man, early recovery's tough, and late recovery's tough.
Period.
Because you've got to go to a world you've never been to, that's really unclear. And so at some point you've got to trust that that's where you're going, and you just got to walk there. And you can't give up in the middle, or else you're not going to get to have the experience of being there. So there's a similar thing to this. I value work like this because there are so many steps of just chopping wood and carrying water. The other element, and somebody mentioned it earlier, is we don't do the same thing every day, which makes it, if we were building that wall every day, I'd never want to see walnut again in my life. I hate it.
But to live by that quote, right? To love and appreciate the work, you almost kind of got to take it back to like that fear of failure, in that like so many people find themselves like working that 9 to 5 in a cubicle underneath the fluorescent lights that are miserable in
Right.
doing the work, right? So you have to like find what it is
Right.
that provides that fulfillment for you.
This
Like
is an interesting thing, though. Is like, you're in the 9 to 5, you're in the cubicle, you hate your job, right? Okay, so we're that person right now. Which comes first, the misery or is it something where I can't enjoy this work because I'm miserable, or is it I'm miserable because I've never learned how to enjoy the work?
Yeah.
And so if you show up to your job, no matter what it is, and you find a way to love it. So let's presume for a minute you can find a way to love your work, whatever it is. What's the company's name on The Office? The paper company. The icon of like mundane cubicle work. If you can love that, if you can love your job, what do you need? What else do you need if you love your job? And there's always value in helping other people, even if that helping other people is small as helping the person that's working next to you enjoy their work. Even if the work you're doing is pointless, there's always an opportunity. So if you love your job every day because you're showing up and that's your objective, is to love your job, what else do you need? Now, I think the people that learn how to do that don't end up stuck in a cubicle, because there's not a company on the planet that's not looking for somebody that has the capacity to learn how to love what they do.
And then share that with others.
You can't help but share that with others.
Yeah.
Just loving what you do. Everybody wants to be in the presence of somebody that's surrounded by that energy, right? And so I would pose that you don't end up miserable in a cubicle without your own assistance. And you don't stay there if what you're working to do is to love what you do.
Yeah.
And so, I understand that that's a pretty big statement. A lot of people don't feel that way, but, we live in a country where you can do whatever you want.
I love your perspective. I do. It's a tough sell,
It's
but
a tough
I love
sell.
your perspective.
I love what I do. What I've been focused on is enjoying the work that I do. I've had different jobs that I've done over the years, and I love what I do today. And the times where I've done work that I didn't enjoy, particularly the work itself, that's a problem that I had to solve. And what I did love in that moment is learning how to solve that problem and engaging with the problem and not letting the problem just become this hurdle that I couldn't get over. It was just a problem that needed to be solved. If there's something that's preventing me from loving the work I do, it means there's a problem that I've got to solve. And I enjoy solving problems.
And it's on you if you don't address it.
Right. And the less I address it, the more that problem becomes a hurdle that I can't overcome, and then I end up stuck where I am, So I had a company, and we survived the economic downturn, but I was scarred after that experience. It was painful. It was difficult. And, we were serving a high-end clientele, and they quit spending money. And so I was in the middle of that. Finances were tough. Naturally, everything that's on the home front is tough when finances are tough. And it was at a time in 2011 where there just wasn't a lot of activity. And what I did is kept showing up and kept trying to do the next right thing, in spite of how miserable I was, in spite of how difficult it was. And somebody came along and said, I want to buy your company. It didn't make any sense. And so I can't link that to exactly what I'm talking about. What I can say is that there was something that attracted that company to come along and say, I want to buy what you're doing.
You're presenting it in some sort of way.
I wasn't presenting it to
Or-
anybody.
yeah.
I was like showing up and saying, how do I hold on to this thing, you know? And how do I do the best job I can? And somebody approached me out of the blue. And what I can say with absolute certainty is that that person, knowing that person, and that person would not have approached me had I been in that I'm miserable and I want to give up. I know that for sure. I know that there was a certain amount of what attracted them to that company was the sort of enthusiasm of the fact that I did at some point love what I did, and I still tried to show up for it even when it was difficult.
And you were trying to do the best that you could do.
I was
think
always trying to do
That's a factor here that
Maybe so, yeah.
comes into play. Good work is born not from repetition and just showing up. It's also you're putting your heart in it and you want to do something of value. That starts to make that, to me, spreads the love all over the place, and people are attracted to that, to good work.
Yeah, I was gonna say earlier when I was working framing houses, they used to have a saying on the job site, "It looks good from my house," which basically means like I don't give a fuck how it looks, and I just want to punch the clock and get out of here. And there's just no pride in craftsmanship, no pride of ownership, and you know what we're doing. And you kind of threw me off guard with that question before. I've been thinking about it, and it's not. Like, there's a lot of subtlety involved in, you know, the way that my relationship with craft has enhanced my life. And I think it has in some ways, and there's a lot of room for me to grow in other ways, but, you know, it's kind of a way of being. It's more of, like we touched on, sort of fluidity. And, you know, if you bring that intractable rigidity into the shop and you come up against a problem, one thing is going to break. You know, it's going to be what you're working on, or it's going to be you. But if you remain fluid, you know, and open to just like a different outcome than maybe what you were expecting, that like really translates to life, and it's helped me a lot personally with like anger, which is something I still struggle with. Like, I'm trying to get in the Zen mode like these dudes, and I hear them talking. You know, but I like taking pictures of my shit, and I'm still pretty like fixated on the outcome, you know. But maybe I'll get there one day. But yeah, that like fluidity and just mindfulness too. I was thinking about that, like as you know, I was pushing a piece of something through this table saw, and the blade is about, you know, an inch away from my fingers, and I'm paying attention
You're
to
mindful.
what's going on. You know, in a way that I think a lot of people aren't in their everyday lives. And I like that. It makes me feel sharp, you know, and it makes me feel alive. And the other thing I was going to say about, you know, the whole process, like how that's fulfilling, going from like design concept to finished product, is for me like, it's proof that I exist. You know, I mean, everybody's had some appreciation for the satisfaction of cutting their lawn and seeing the difference between before and after, and manipulating your physical environment is just satisfying. And I think on some basic level, like, we're meant to command our realities physically. You know, we are like world makers as human beings. Like, we have
One of our prime
power, you know, and we create, and I don't know, I think that like gets at the essence of things for me. So yeah, that's all I got.
I think like what you were describing is like it's easy to teach that type of like mindset in a space like this, but for somebody that's like doesn't have an opportunity to like work with like-minded individuals who are kind of like intentionally there to create that same sort of space for each other, it becomes more of a challenge.
How do you help the cubicle?
How do you help? Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of,
Or even like his previous employment, you know, on the job site.
I think you create what you set out to create in life. And, you know, and that's a debatable statement, but I believe that.
Your experience tells you that.
My experience tells me that, and maybe I'm different. You know, maybe maybe having red hair has put me in a different position. I don't know.
The beard's looking sharp, baby.
The beard, maybe it's the beard. I believe that you create what you set out to create. And I believe that part of the challenge is learning how to ask the right questions, learning how to search out the right thing. So there's never been a time in my life where I've arrived at any outcome, good, bad, or indifferent, where I can't look back and see the decisions that put me there. I've never met a drug addict that has a set of circumstances that you can't look back and say that's how you got here.
It's on you. Yeah.
It's
So
not necessarily in that sense of like, man, that's on you.
Taking responsibility for.
Not even taking responsibility, just an awareness that
showing
like,
up.
I made those choices, right? And so regardless of who's responsible or accountable, all that aside, I made those choices. So today, if I'm unhappy with the outcomes, what happens if I change the decisions I'm making? And that's the big hurdle, right? And so I think one of the reasons why a 12-step program still exists is the last command is to come back and tell people how you got there, right? And I think the reason why it's survived is because there's enough people that say, this worked, and it can work for you. And that's kind of, it continues on as a result of that. But what that exchange is basically providing somebody who's never been there with enough belief that they're willing to walk through the valley of darkness to get there. Just on the fact that somebody else has said you can get there, right?
A large group has said.
Right. But, I didn't hear the large group. I heard one person, right? There's a lot of people in that large group who I thought, man, this guy's an idiot. I don't relate to anything he said. But one person said that, and I thought, okay, I'm willing to take what he's saying, and I'm willing to walk through a lot of difficulty. So for the person in the cubicle, or the person who's new in recovery, the person who's stuck, doesn't matter what context we're talking about, professionally, in relationships, in recovery, that person is going to have to walk through a tremendous amount of darkness to get anywhere. They're going to have to walk through darkness to die. They're going to have to walk through darkness to live and to be happy. No matter what, there's going to be darkness that's walked through. And so one of those options in the type of darkness we walk through is to walk through the darkness of the only thing you have to go on is that somebody else told you could get there. And so for the person in the cubicle, the belief that I would offer somebody is that if you're willing to show up and love what you do and pour your heart, as Andy mentioned, pour your heart into your work, whatever that is, whether that's in becoming the best paper shuffler or becoming the person in the office that makes life for other people easier by getting them the tools they need to do their job, or just by exchanging a human interaction with somebody. If that becomes the thing that you do repetitively, what I can say is that I've never seen anybody in my life that followed that kind of mindset that didn't have a transformation. But to get from being miserable to being that person is a path. That everybody, this is where we're all alone as human beings. Everybody has to walk that path alone. We have Erica here, she made us a tremendous lunch.
Yes, she did.
She's a great friend of this program, and she got offered a mic, and she's denying it.
Baker.
Boys only. That's hardly the case. We got. Yeah. Yeah. Nice to meet you. Are you sure it's just a block?
Block? The brick.
Yeah. We had it over here when I was setting up, and I forgot to ask you about it. Bear with me, man. Yeah, baby. That's the thing I need. I must have left it at home. It wasn't in my bag when I got it. Goodness. I don't know if that'll work. It's not.
Different connection?
No, different
What do you got? Or is that,
The
like,
camera's still rolling?
I got that. I think I got that.
Cool.
Man, we're covered. Why don't you sit down, Maddie? You can get in on this.
So make it whole, how many current apprentices do you have working with you now?
So we got 4. We got Andy, who you met, who's he's modest. He's a world-renowned author in the woodworking field. He's in his private studios here, which is gorgeous. And he's here to do his own commissions, but also to teach and be a part of what's going on. And Ian is here. He escaped out today. It was his day off, so he just came for the grilled cheese and bacon. And then we have a whole rotating cast. Erica's one of our best friends. She's bought some great work here to do. She's doing some work right now, which is awesome.
Borrow tools. Can I borrow your hammer drill?
You can borrow a hammer drill. This is what Erica's making right now, which is awesome. She's gotten glue everywhere. She's made a mess in my hand.
If not, it's okay.
Is there gonna be a light?
She's working on light fixtures, and so she's got this hide that she's finding different ways to resonate, basically, to
Guys, we
impregnate.
might lose the live stream in a moment. The laptop's about to die.
Uh-oh.
What kind do you need? I apologize, but the full podcast will be posted to all of our streaming sites
There we go.
this evening.
So y'all can tell all your friends that you're famous and it's going to exist for eternity.
The video will be up on YouTube shortly, so thank y'all for tuning in. I'm gonna leave it when I forgot my power cord to the laptop at home.
Uh-oh.
Thanks for coming in.
Well, he's going to keep talking to you
Oh, we are? We're gonna keep going?
until you get sick of talking to him. You're not getting sick anytime soon of talking, are you?
No.
There's a lot of conversations taking place in the studio.
Yeah.
So like if somebody, like what is the process for bringing on an apprentice? How can somebody, if
They just call me. That's it. There's no rubber stamp for anything that happens here. So what this place is this is a framework. What I've created is a place and a set of tools where people can come as they are. And so the four guys that you met here, Ethan and Michael and Adam and Maddie, are very different people with very different backgrounds and very different lessons to learn. And that's going to be the case with anybody that comes here. So this is not a place where we try to create a certain type of person coming out of here. This is a place where we invite people to be here and find out what they need and send them on the way. So I don't expect really people to come here and have the same outcomes in the general sense. In a broader sense, what we hope for, obviously, is that the outcome is that people find the specific tools that they need. And so as far as getting involved, somebody just calls me up. We'll have a conversation. I'm not interested in people who are just biding their time, And so that's really what I'm sussing out. Whatever other circumstances people come here with is not nearly as important as whether or not they're willing to work, willing to chop wood and carry water. And that's basically what I asked all the guys who've come here in not so many words, whether or not they were prepared to do whatever was asked of them, and they all said yes in their own way. I caught you right in the middle of a grilled cheese.
Mid bite, baby. Mid bite.
Michael, get in there.
Come on.
Just rotating. Adam's got a bunch of words until you put a freaking mic in front of him.
He did.
said
He
a few
did.
things.
What's on the horizon for Macon Hall? Like, what do you guys?
What's on the horizon? We've got a miniature mock-up of a table we're about to build here. That's going to be this dining table, which is just right now
to replace this here?
We've put a tablecloth on a turd here, and so you didn't realize how ugly this table is underneath, but it is. So we're going to build a beautiful table here. We're shooting to have an open house for anybody that's interested in coming and seeing the space and seeing what we're doing here. Later in the month, probably February is when that's going to happen. And mostly what we're starting to do is it's been sad is the work in the shop's pretty much coming to an end, so we're really starting to focus on specific pieces and projects. And there's a handful of materials we're playing around with out of curiosity. Some of those materials are just showing up here. Like Andy mentioned, we're starting to work a bit with leather, specifically as it relates to furniture. And so right now we're in a process of just experimenting with that and using it in different places and seeing how it wears and figuring out different ways we can apply it. We have a handful of other materials, some different casting metals that just arrived that we're going to be playing around with. And so part of what we've done up to now, even in the stuff we've been building, and part of what we'll do in the future is just play around with something and see what sticks, and kind of follow where we're led. Erica, who was just here, and there's some other people you met when you got here. There's a lot of artisans and creators who are coming here as treating this place in a sense like an incubator, where they can come and experiment with materials that they might not otherwise have access to, or techniques that they don't have access to. And there's kind of an open invitation for people who are creating particularly things that they're not familiar with. to come here and kind of drop their ideas on the table and see if there's an opportunity to do that. So people who, there was a fellow here earlier that is a real fine wood sculptor who's come to us to help us take some of his wood sculptures and translate those into concrete and go through the whole molding process of taking rubber molds and turning those into a production part. And so that's a great opportunity where we can introduce an immensely talented guy to a medium that he's not had exposure to. And it creates an energy in here. And that's what I'm talking about, making a framework. That's what I'm talking about. So that these people are attracted to come here and bring whatever energy they have to bring. What it exposes the apprentices to is different people in different walks of life. And one of the things that I find in early recovery is it's really easy to get trapped into a monoculture of yourself. You know, a bunch of people who are all in the same stage in life, a bunch of new recovery, a bunch like don't have a lot going on for them by definition. They all end up together, and it creates this sort of like it's a pretty difficult situation to be in. Whereas here, what I'm kind of inviting anybody to come, whether it's eat with us or create with us or whatever, just to see those different walks of life, you know. And there's not a template for that either. I like for people to come as they are, whether they're in great shape in life or not. It doesn't really matter to me as long as they're willing to be present when they get here and engage. And it's in that moment, you know, that's my job, is to create that platform where people can come as they are. What I believe is that when a bunch of people come as they are, things happen.
Magical shit happens.
Magical shit happens. It becomes, you know, it becomes this thing where the finished object is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's my principal belief in this project, is that if I can create that, things happen. And I don't know what that's going to look like. And I was talking with somebody, Matt Nannis, who said he was going to come.
He told me he was coming.
He told me he was coming. Last night he told me he was coming. He said he's definitely coming, and he didn't.
He said he had to be somewhere this afternoon, and he would pop in before we started.
Rubbish.
Yeah.
That guy. Anyway, he and I were talking last night, and I was telling him that this project's always been a bit of a science experiment for me. And that's the experiment. It's what happens when you create that type of atmosphere. I want to find out.
You're gonna find out.
We are finding out, right?
Yeah.
But I'm curious. You know, so we're finding out right now what happens in a general sense. I'm curious, what does this look like 10 years from now? What happens when this becomes something that people go on and have children, and their children come here? You know, either to see where their dad, you know, pulled his head out of his ass, or come here as they are because they need to figure out a way to pull their head out of their ass. You know, what happens when this becomes a generational thing? Because when I got to a point in my recovery where it was time for me to take on a new face, and I asked myself, what is it that made my recovery what it is today? It was that, in a sense, accidental synergy that was around me that really created an environment to make me who I am. And so my question is, can you do that intentionally? Can you create that place intentionally? And when you've created that place, does it have the same effect that I experience in my life on other people in a general sense, you know, help people become the people they are, as opposed to saying, hey, we're going to bring somebody in here and turn them out looking a certain way or get a certain outcome as a result, you know. I'm saying let's bring them in here and see what happens. And in a general sense, my belief is when people get put in that environment, they strive to become different human beings.
Yeah. What were you guys working on when I walked in the door today?
That was the project with the guy who's translating one of his wood sculptures into concrete. That was going on. Adam and I were literally butchering a butcher block. Adam was running it through a tool, and it was unadvisable. And he did it on my suggestion, and it exploded.
That's happened before.
It's happened
On
before.
a cutting board.
Yeah. We were doing things kind of bigger than, our eyes were bigger than our mouths, I suppose. In this case, our objects were bigger than our tools. Adam was safe. Adam knows how to handle himself around a tool. So we were doing that. We were getting the walnut finished up. So there's a bunch of things going on. I have some family and friends from Scotland who are coming to stay here on Monday night, so we're getting